At Online MedEd, we walk you through every topic in detail, so you're ready for the boards and the wards.
Understanding osteoporosis has become an increasingly important topic in the world of nutrition today. In the same way that cholesterol and hypertension have direct links to your diet, osteoporosis also has a direct link to your diet. So let's go into detail to try and understand exactly what foods to eat and what foods to minimize or avoid in order to maximize bone mineral density. So if we start at the top, your risk factors for osteoporosis include, number 1, smoking. Number 2, alcohol. Number 3, caffeine. Number 4, sedentary lifestyle. Number 5, limited sun exposure. Number 6, low estrogen or testosterone. Number 7, family history. Number 8, your age. Number 9, if you are female. And number 10, if you are of Caucasian or Asian descent. Now, the top 6 risk factors here are modifiable, and the bottom 4 are non-modifiable risk factors. So the good news is that the bulk of these are under your control. So there's 3 major factors that are going to determine your bone health from a dietary perspective. The first one is calcium. The second is vitamin D. And the third is protein quality. And I'm going to put this as a green asterisk right here, because the quality of your protein is incredibly important, and this is something that's actually highly misunderstood in the topic of nutrition. So let's delve into more detail here, and then we'll go into calcium and vitamin D next. So there's a fundamental difference between animal protein and plant protein. Now, all protein is made up of a chain of amino acids, whether those proteins come from the plant world or whether they come from the animal world. But the actual sequence of amino acids in those proteins is what dictates their tertiary structure, their activity inside of a biological species, and then most importantly, the effect that they can have on you when you consume them. So animal-based proteins tend to have more sulfurinated amino acids than do plant proteins. So if we draw 2 amino acid chains here, what you'll find is that animal proteins tend to have more sulfur. Plant proteins have less. So why is this a problem? Why is it even something we're going to be talking about? Well, the 2 sulfurinated amino acids include cysteine and methionine. And when you consume protein, the individual amino acids end up in your blood. So these amino acids that contain sulfur, when they mix with water in the aqueous environment of your blood, can give rise to small amounts of sulfuric acid, H2SO4. And if you remember back from your chemistry days, sulfuric acid is an extremely strong acid. So small amounts of sulfuric acid are produced, which can then decrease the pH of your blood. Now, your blood has buffering systems built into it. So when your blood pH drops from 7.4 and below, let's pretend that there were no buffering systems built into your blood. You would see a decrease in your blood pH pretty quickly as a result of sulfuric acid production. But there are, and the one that we're going to be talking about today is calcium, because this is also implicated in your bone mass. So, calcium is used as the buffer in order to bring your blood pH back up to its set point of 7.4. But when you're operating in this state by consuming large amounts of animal protein that then give rise to sulfuric acid production, if this happens once in a while, it's not going to cause a big problem. But if you're consuming a diet that has animal protein coming in multiple times per day over the course of weeks to months to years, this can lead to what's called chronic metabolic acidosis. And this process can unfold, leading to liberation of calcium from two places. So in your body, calcium is stored in your bones, and in your muscles. So calcium is present in both of these tissues. And you would think, okay, well, if I'm going to liberate calcium in order to buffer the blood back to this pH set point of 7.4, I'm going to go first to the bone because there's more calcium in your bone than there is in your muscles. However, stable isotope tracer experiments have shown that there's a larger efflux of calcium from your muscles than there is from your bone. Calcium does come out of both tissues in order to act as this buffer. However, your muscles are a more labile storehouse. And as a result of that, calcium effluxes from your tissues, calcium effluxes from your muscles quicker than it does from your bones. Now, over the course of months to years, because this is a chronic problem, studies have shown that chronic metabolic acidosis can lead to a 15% reduction in bone mineral density over the course of approximately 10 years. As far as your muscles are concerned, this can lead to muscle wasting, especially in the elderly. Now let's go into a little bit more detail here about what specific foods we can actually migrate towards in order to prevent this process from unfolding in the first place. So here's another way to look at this process. Here's your pH set point of 7.4. This is a basic environment. This is an acidic environment. When you consume foods like bread, rice, and pasta, there's no noticeable change in the pH of your blood in the hours following the consumption of that meal. However, when you consume legumes, fruits, and vegetables, there is a measurable increase in blood pH immediately following the consumption of those foods. Conversely, when you consume eggs, beef, cheese, poultry, pork, and fish, there is a measurable decrease in the pH of your blood over the course of time. So if we want to get away from this chronic metabolic acidosis, we obviously want to move away from these foods and gravitate more towards these foods right here. Now when it comes to calcium, we've been told for the longest time that the best foods to get calcium in your diet include milk, cheese, and yogurt. And we've been reinforced this message for 20, 30, 40 years at this point. If that were a true statement, that would mean that people who consume more dairy products have better bone mineral density and a lower risk for osteoporosis. The problem is that it's not true. And the reason that we know this is because there are many studies that are referenced in the lecture notes that show that people who consume more dairy products actually have more hip fractures. Now, one study in particular studied 100,000 men and women, followed them over the course of 20 years to try and understand how consuming one glass of milk is going to affect their bone mineral density over the course of time. And what they found were four incredibly interesting things. The first thing was that they had a 15% increased risk for all-cause mortality simply by drinking one glass of milk per day. In addition to that, they found that there was a 15% increase in cardiovascular disease risk with one glass of milk per day. In addition to that, there was an 8% increase in cancer risk, and there was a 60% increase in hip fractures in women. And that's, again, just by consuming 1 glass of milk per day. So calcium is actually better found in fruits and vegetables, believe it or not. And these are the places that you can find it. Legumes, right here. Beans are a storehouse of calcium. So consuming as little as 1/2 to 1 cup per day can help get you to your calcium total. In addition to that, green leafy vegetables, including cabbage, kale, bok choy, and collards. These are excellent sources of calcium, and they come from dark green leafy vegetables. In addition to that, I'll write nuts and seeds, because these are also great places to get calcium that doesn't come along with this increased risk for metabolic acidosis as well. Now, when it comes to vitamin D, the third piece of this puzzle, there's a couple of things to think about. There's 3 main ways that you can get vitamin D. The first way is simply by going out into the sun and spending between 15 and 20 minutes per day exposing your face and your forearms. Now again, if you are Caucasian or Asian descent, 15 minutes a day may not be enough. And if you live in a northern latitude, that also may not be enough. So if a small amount of sunlight is not possible for you to get per day, or if exposing yourself to this still leads to low vitamin D status, then your second option is to supplement with approximately 1,000 IU per day. My favorite way to get vitamin D is to get them from shiitake mushrooms. So what you do is you find shiitake mushrooms in the grocery store. You take your shiitake mushrooms and you flip them upside down so that their gills are facing up. You then put them on a windowsill, you expose them to the sunlight, and you let UV radiation shine down on them. Now these mushrooms have been harvested, but it doesn't matter because they will still produce vitamin D even on your countertop. So if you leave them alone for approximately 4 to 6 hours, when you're done with the day and you come back home, they have increased their vitamin D production by 1,000 to 10,000%. The beauty of this is that you didn't have to do anything for it. So understanding how to minimize your risk for osteoporosis is actually quite simple. As a quick review, we want to focus on 3 things. Where are you getting your calcium? Where are you getting your vitamin D? And what quality of protein are you consuming? We shy away from animal protein because it's a sulfurinated amino acid heavy that leads to chronic metabolic acidosis and calcium efflux from both bones and muscles. And we move more towards plant-based proteins, green leafy vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds, because they come from the plant world, and in addition to that, they're also rich in calcium. On top of that, we go into the sun, we supplement with vitamin D, or we eat mushrooms to ensure adequate vitamin D intake. So there you have it. Osteoporosis is well under your control. As long as you pay attention to these 3 concepts, then you can minimize your risk for the development of osteoporosis.